We're on the same
When I
side.
woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
One about the past and one about the future.
Yeah, okay. Well, welcome back to Draftvice, a football show, everybody. It's a football show. I'm Walter, and here today we're talking about two things only, right? It's an emergency episode. We got the draft coming up. Apparently, it's going to be virtual draft, but it's not just the drafts coming up. We had a trade today. We had Brandin Cooks traded from the LA Rams for a second-round pick. His third trade for a high pick, man. This guy, you can knock him because he's been traded to multiple teams, or you could say, dude, this guy keeps on taking in high picks, man. Very good. So, yeah, man, he's getting traded for a second-round pick to the Texans, right? Texans are trading their 57th overall pick in the draft, right? Not the one they got from the Arizona Cardinals. They're keeping that one. The one that they got for trading DeAndre Hopkins for a second-round pick and David Johnson. So let's break this down a little bit, right? Brandin Cooks, very speedy receiver, right? Now you get to tie him with Deshaun Watson. He gets Will Fuller, right? Speedy guy as well. And Kenny Stills. Dude, that's three fast receivers that are crazy fast. That's like light speed fast. It's like light speed rescue fast. It's like if Deshaun Watson was a Power Ranger or something. I like it, man. I like this trade. First time this year that Bill O'Brien's done something, I went, you know what? I probably would have done the exact same. Well, I don't know if I would have done the exact same thing. I'm not always big on trading second-round picks. Yes, Brandin Cooks had a few concussions, but he hasn't missed a lot of games, strangely, because a lot of his concussions come like during Super Bowls and things like that. So to be honest, like last year he missed a couple of games, but it happened around the time of I believe that bye week thing that they get in the NFL, right? You guys know about the bye week. I wish I had that now we're kind of getting our own bye week. We're getting a bye month. We're getting a bye virus crisis. Hope everybody's doing well, by the way. So we got a virus going on, and we got Brandin Cooks traded to the Texans, right? Bill O'Brien's catching a little bit of flack on the Twitter, but I kind of like this deal, right? So the Texans in this deal only have to pay Brandin Cooks $8 million a year, right? The Rams have to eat about $20 million in dead cap from trading away Brandin Cooks. It sounds like the Rams are trying to undo some bad deals. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Rams later on. They needed some picks. They needed some cap space going in next year. I think this affects their offense. Like, this is a guy that they kind of needed, right? They needed some speed on the offense. So maybe they're looking to draft a receiver. Now everybody's going to be tying them to receivers because they trade away a good receiver. They're probably going to try to draft a speedy one in this draft, which there's a couple of guys who might be up to some good for the LA Rams. So now the Texans, right? They trade DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson and a very high second-round pick 40, right? Now basically what they did is they traded DeAndre Hopkins to move up 17 spots. But also, like, they were paying DeAndre Hopkins about $14 million a year, still very under contract, but now they're going to be paying Brandin Cooks $8 million a year. So they knocked $6 million off that cap. That's actually not a bad deal. I kind of like what they've been like. I don't like that they traded DeAndre Hopkins, but it seems like they found a way to kind of like clean up what they did, right? They realized, like, this could blow up in our face. Yeah, we should probably fix this. All right, maybe we find a guy. Maybe we find a guy who's maybe we find a team that's selling a receiver, right? There's a lot of receivers in this draft. That's been the big conflict, right? Everybody's going like, there's a lot of receivers. You can probably get a starting receiver in the 5th round in this draft, as everybody's been saying. But it's not that easy, right? Like, it's, we've got the COVID situation. You might not have you might not have a long off season this year. So, rookie receivers coming into the NFL don't always start really well right away. Like, we've seen some guys get going maybe like mid-season. A.J. Brown last year. DK Metcalf had some good moments last year. Michael Thomas kind of like towards the end of his first year, kind of started coming on real strong. We've seen a lot of second-round, third-round receivers start showing up. Juju Smith-Schuster, his first year, towards the end of his. So usually about halfway through, but they've also had an off-season program, which we might not have this year. We might not have an extensive off-season program at all. They're already supposed to be starting OTAs for some teams, and they're not. So I don't know. I think this is a good deal if there is a 2020 season for the Texans to be like, listen, we're getting a guy. Yeah, Deshaun Watson's not going to be totally used to him, But you're going to have other guys in the offense that you are used to. You're going to have Kenny Stills. You're going to have Will Fuller. You're going to have Kiki QT. You're now going to have David Johnson and Duke Johnson, the Johnson brothers, Johnson and Johnson, not the other Johnsons and Johnsons over on the Jets. We're talking about the Johnson and Johnson on the Texans. I think you could do a lot with this offense. I'm actually kind of like uniquely intrigued now, right? Like I was, it's weird. Like for every good move that Bill O'Brien does, he does a stupid move, right? For every stupid move, though, he kind of like it ebbs and flows, right? Tunsil trade, kind of a weird one, but it was definitely better than the Duke Johnson trade, right? I think it was a good trade because I'm a Browns fan, so we get a third-round pick out of it, right? But like Laramie Tunsil, 2 first-rounders and a second-rounder, that's a lot to pay for a tackle. But, you got to keep your quarterback upright. But then he also had the Jadeveon Clowney trade, kind of a meh trade. DeAndre Hopkins, kind of a meh trade for David Johnson, a second-rounder. I mean, you probably should have taken a second-rounder just for taking David Johnson off their hands. So now you're going ahead, you're trading away your best receiver. Well, now they're getting a good receiver for that second round. Well, actually, they're keeping that second round. They're trading the worst second-rounder, which I think is a kind of a smart move. You're moving down a little bit in the draft. You're moving up, actually, like for 17 spots, like I said before. More likely to get like a solid starter in the top 50 picks than you would at the end of after the 50 picks. So there's some value to what they've been doing. It's Bill O'Brien's not a total egghead, right? He's not. I don't think he's an amazing GM. I don't think I would totally follow this mindset. But I've even said it before with how they've addressed the corner situation, right? Vernon Hargraves, Gary and Conley, making like semi-intelligent decisions. Like, okay, like we need cornerback help. All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll trade a third rounder for Gary and Conley. We'll claim a guy off the waiver wire who's a former first round pick. Like they're going after smart spots, So I'm not totally against what this Texans team's been doing. We'll see if it works, right? So there's that. Well, now let's get to some. This is what you guys all came for, right? Talk about the trade. And now let's talk about some tackles. Yeah, today's the day. I'm starting my my prelude to the NFL draft. My top guys on the tackle board going into the NFL draft. I spent the past few days going over tape for a bunch of guys. I think I did like 12 guys I have 15 guys on this list. I watched all their tape in the last few days. Not all of it. Not like believe me, you should not be taking my word as gospel. This is what I'm saying. This is for fun. I'm not a GM. I am not a scout. This is fun. This is my opinion. I hope these guys all have great careers, right? So I'm going to go over like the top 15 guys that I got to scout, look at their tape, and kind of give you my opinion. And OT1 has been OT1 for a lot of people. OT1 is Jedrick Wills, right? Right tackle, played only right tackle in college, although I heard he played left tackle when he was in high school. Who cares about high school? But like, you know what? Like, listen, let me flip over to his guys. I got a notebook, right? I took notes. I did this like I was doing homework. It took some time. It was not and they're not even all in order. So this is gonna be a pain in the butaka. The butaka, that's a new word. I do have Andrew Thomas next on the list. He's OT2. And then I'll round up the top 3 with Tristan Wirfs. These are kind of the standard ones, right? The top 3, most people have the same top 3. Tristan Wirfs, Andrew Thomas, and you might wonder where Mekhi Becton is on my list. Well, he might be coming up soon. Yeah. But Jedrick Wills, Alabama right tackle. I watched him play Michigan and LSU and some Auburn. And I'll say this, very good in the run, right? Very good run blocker. Let's pull this up. Let's see. I should have summarized this a little bit better. But I liked what I saw from him against LSU. These are at least a little bit cleaner. It's good get off, good hands, good footwork. He if you watch, he almost never even loses a rep. Like it was fun watching him, right? You might wonder and again, you look at the level of competition, SEC, right? That's definitely the top level of competition. I think there's 2 guys in this draft who have faced a lot of good competition, who have shown enough tape that I think very good qualified arguments for the top 2 spots for tackle. I think number 1 is Jedrick Wills, and number 2 is Andrew Thomas, Georgia offensive lineman. Now he stays a little bit up. He's a little bit. I'd watch the tape for Andrew Thomas. He seems almost a little upright. Like it's weird. It's almost like he's I know maybe he has longer legs. He just seemed like he was above the rest of the tackles, right? And by the way, you guys are probably not here for the early list. Everybody probably has the same top 4 or 5 for the early list. It's the mid list that you're really here for. Don't worry, we're gonna get to those guys. But I liked what I saw for him holding up. He's good in pass blocking, mirrors well. He seeks contact. Both these guys seek contact. Both these guys are always kind of looking to go to the next guy. I liked Jedrick Wills' tape a little bit more. He just always seemed to be like, I never had to worry about him, right? Like Thomas, I think Thomas is a really good pass blocker. He's not as good of a run blocker as Jedrick Wills, and I think that might be. It's hard to tell what run blocking though, right? Like it's hard as far as translation, right? Because everybody's got different schemes, gap scheme, outside zone, and I think both these guys are pretty flexible as far as what schemes they could fit in. I just stuck Wills up there. I liked Wills' tape better. I just, Thomas could lose a rep or 2 here, where I feel like I almost didn't see too many reps where Wills was losing. So, I mean, listen, let's be real. You guys didn't come to hear about those guys, right? You want to hear more about like mid-round guys. Andrew Thomas, I felt like he got a little high in his pass sets, but Andrew Thomas always looked like the guy who should have lost more reps, but never did. Like, it was just like, oh, wow, like he's kind of a little, like, off kilter, but he got his guy past the pocket. He pushed his guy past the arc. I was almost kind of, like, shocked with Andrew Thomas that people liked him so much because I felt like people were a little bit more snooty, right? Like, I like Andrew Thomas. Why is I would take him in the top 10. I would take him if I was any of the teams in the top 10 that needed a tackle. Same thing with Jedrick Wills. He gets he's very, like I said before, he looks for contact. He's he leaves a little bit to be desired in run blocking. But overall, like again, with the games I watched for him, he gets a good push against guys in the pocket. He shows good mental demeanor, right? He shows some good mentality, good awareness too, right? Like, knows when to pass a guy off, kind of is aware of the defenders that are coming up in his area. He has good footwork. He's got decent hands. I'm not too worried. The weird thing is I was watching this Georgia team, right? And honestly, is Georgia tape just more fun to watch in 2018 than it was in 2019? Like, you can't, like, sometimes, like, the good thing with Alabama and Georgia, right, is and LSU, is you're watching a lot of good guys, like, playing. Like, even when you're watching a guy, you're seeing other guys play. So, like, Jake Fromm, like, because I looked at, like, a couple of games from last year, and, dude, even, like, 2018 tape for Andrew Thomas, I felt like 2018 was almost better. Like, I saw play. Like, I went back and watched a game or 2 of 2018 tape, and I was like, oh, he seems almost like more comfortable in this scheme. It seemed like everybody was more comfortable in 2018 than they were in 2019 for the Georgia Bulldogs, and that includes Jake Fromm. I felt like he didn't have anybody to throw to other than his running back, who's now also in the NFL or going into the NFL. So Ridley left, and he seemed to really like Ridley, and with no Ridley, and Ridley didn't really do much this year in the NFL. Hopefully he bounces back. He's on the Chicago Bears. We're not talking about him. We're talking about Andrew Thomas. Like I said, Georgia, it was weird because I kept on seeing Andrew Thomas. I'm like, is he a little high? Is it just that he's taller than everybody? It was just a little weird. But I still, like, I didn't feel like I saw him lose too many reps. Like, it was such a weird thing. Again, he would have these reps. You're like, he's going to lose that, right? Like, this has got to be the sack. And it wouldn't happen. It would just be able to get the guy past. And he would regain balance. He'd recover well. So I was a big fan of his. South Carolina, Notre Dame, had a couple of good options to go ahead. The 2018 Alabama game for Andrew Thomas, and that was the thing. Yeah, like you could watch the Alabama, LSU, you could watch Georgia playing, Alabama in 2018, and you get to watch Isaiah Wilson, and again, that's a guy who's gonna be a little bit further down the list. But like, you're getting opportunity to watch some of these guys, and you're like, wait, this is the guy who did this. It's a very fun thing. Watch some tape, everybody. Watch some offensive tackle tape. You don't have to watch all that. You don't have to watch the 4 games, but you can watch quite a few games and get away with going like, ooh, this is fun. I kind of like this. Even tackle tape is kind of fun. Like, I was telling my cousin, I'm like, I'm gonna go watch some tackle tape, and he's like, tackle tape, like that. Is that tape that you tackle? Like, I use it like he knows what I was talking about, but Andrew Thomas, again, he shows a little bit better as a pass blocker. Very good pass blocker. And like, sometimes he loses a rep here or there, but I never felt like I was like worried with him, right? Like, again, like, I always felt like a little bit of balance issues every once in a while, but it wasn't. And again, I felt like 2018 is almost like the game or two that I watched over there. It was even better. So those are the top 2 guys, right? Then we got Tristan Wirfs. Then we got, wait for it, Josh Jones. And then we got Mekhi Becton. And those guys kind of round out my first-round guys. You might wonder why I have Mekhi Becton a little bit further back. So there's questions for me as far as the type of offense that they run. Like, if you watch Mekhi Becton tape, you'll go ahead and be like, first off, he loves, like, when the run's going away from him, he'll dive block, and it might be something that the coaches are telling him to do. It was, I don't know, like, it was hard because his pass set itself is not bad, right? He's got a good bend, gets down low, so you would think he's going to be a really good run blocker and pass blocker. But a lot of what they do in that Louisville offense is designed runs by the quarterback. They'll, a lot of option, a lot of like run, not just run pass options, but like option between the quarterback, keeper, and go. Because again, like, this is the offense that birthed Lamar Jackson into the NFL. So Louisville's offense is very, it's a lot of screen game as well, a lot of short games. You're not getting really some play action. You're not getting a lot of true pass sets and getting to see him. And when he's done the true pass sets, he wasn't always it wasn't always up to snuff when he was purely pass setting. So there's some risk there with Mekhi Becton, and I know a lot of people didn't like Josh Jones, and I was a little shocked. I watched Josh Jones' tape, and I'm like, actually, like, I kind of like Josh Jones a little bit better. When he but let's get back to Mekhi Becton, right? He's number 5 on my list. When he stays up, he could be a good blocker, but he's a guy who gets on the ground a lot. I watched him play. Oh my God, my handwriting's horrible. I should have typed these. I typed some of them, and then I didn't type some of them. I just didn't feel like he was challenged a lot. Like, some of these guys, like I said before, right? Like, Louisville, they're not going out, like, you watch the Clemson game. I think that was one of the games. Kentucky I watched. North Dakota, Notre Dame. You see the ND on the list, and you go, North Dakota? I'm like, no, that's not it. And Notre Dame is fine. You get a couple of guys coming out of there, but they're not really considered like a true defensive, team. Kentucky every once in a while has a couple of good guys. We had a guy from Kentucky last year go in the draft. That Clemson's usually the big one. But again, like, you're not always seeing, like, when you don't have the opportunity to watch these guys against higher end competition, it's a little rough to kind of give a full assessment. That's why I'm saying, like, Mekhi Becton really wasn't tested super much. So, but I like what I see. Like, the guy's athletic. He's got good bend. He's got a good pass set. But, like, we're not seeing him take true pass sets where, it's just a full drop back. Like, they just didn't do that a lot in Louisville because you have an athletic quarterback. You run a lot of screen game. And he was, even when he was in the screen game, he wasn't doing a whole lot. And, like, it was like, the Louisville offense does not do a lot for giving you an assessment of how a tackle is going to operate in the NFL. That being said, he has, you're talking about a giant mammoth of a man, a guy who can play. If he's, hits his peak, will probably be an amazing, like people compare him to Trent Brown kind of level starter. And I think that's a very good possibility. I think he shows some of the athletic traits to do it, but there's some questions. So that's why I put Mekhi Becton a little bit lower. And I was really willing to put him higher. There's some question. You don't know about the mental with him. Let's get to Tristan Wirfs, right? I kept on hearing a lot of talk about him being switched to guard. And, there's a clip out there of, him losing a rep in the Michigan game. And I watched the Michigan game. I got to tell you, I was relatively really impressed. This is why this guy's number 3 on my list. He's in that second tier of tackle. It goes Jedrick Wills, a little bit of space, Andrew Thomas, and then Tristan Wirfs. And I'm, he's very good at mirroring. We saw, and again, this is a guy, the reason why I have him lower than Andrew Thomas and lower than Jedrick Wills is because he's been tested, but he hasn't been tested to the level of those guys. So, multiple years of Jedrick Wills going up against top-end competition, multiple years of, and even just 2 years of, 2 years of Jedrick Wills going up against top-end competition for Alabama in the SEC. Andrew Thomas, and maybe I have an SEC fetish, but it is one of the tougher divisions. And listen, there's other divisions that are tough. Pac-12 has, there's some good defenses out there. And there's some good teams in certain divisions that you get to see an assessment of. Like Michigan is a good, sometimes a very good defensive team. I thought he did really well holding up against them. He's got a good punch. Oh my God, I should have typed this out, everybody. I apologize. Good mirroring. Good movement skills, gets out in space really well. Gets out in front of blockers. Very good in space, right? Again, USC, he didn't really feel like he was challenged very much. Loses a little bit of ground against Big 91. But that was also a rep that felt like it was a little bit deeper. So he's a guy, there's certain guys who I feel will hold up a lot better against power guys, and some guys who hold up really well against kind of more speed rushers bending the arc. And I felt like Tristan Wirfs had a little bit of an issue with speed to power and a little bit of bull rush, but generally recovered very well. That was a very interesting thing when you watch his tape. Whether you're watching him against Wisconsin or Michigan, he recovers very well. Let's see the next guy on the list, right? Or Minnesota. It's another team that I watched him play. And good at sealing the blocks. Again, his mirroring skills are top notch. Every once in a while can whiff on a run block, but generally speaking is oh my God, I should have typed that. I have some of them that are typed. Don't worry, folks. I'm not going to be I even have him against Oklahoma. I watched a lot of him, didn't I? Shoot. Is it Oklahoma? Oh, no, it's Josh Jones against Oklahoma. I apologize. Yes, I watched Josh Jones against Oklahoma. Gets a false start in the beginning. So, when I started watching Josh Jones's tape and when I started watching Mekhi Becton's tape, it's almost kind of the inverse. I started watching Josh Jones's tape and and I had heard different things from different people, and I'm like, oh, I hear a lot of good things about Mekhi Becton, and I hear this from PFF, and I hear this from this people, and I hear this from TDN, and you go, okay, clearly these people know what they're talking about, but there's some differences of opinion, and you start out with Josh Jones's tape against Oklahoma, and you're like, okay, he's kind of he gets a false start in the beginning, and then he keeps starting to hold up really well, and it's a good space block. My big worry with him is maybe causing a couple of penalties, because I see every once in a while there's a flag on here. Keeps his guy blocked really well, good pass sets. Sometimes puts his hands a little high. Uh, Pulls across really well for reach blocks. Like they had him move across the formation quite a few times. Like they pulling a tackle from the left side to the right side. It happens, but it's not as huge of a thing. And they had him pulling all the way from left tackle all the way across, and they did it quite a bit. Like he was a pulling tackle. It was kind of cool to watch. He does go across the formation quite a bit. His pass set seems a little high. Good at keeping the guy in front of him though, and usually good at pushing the guy towards the guard and kind of keeping the set right. Ends up on the ground a bit, and hard to tell if he's being challenged too. Again, I have him and Becton in that same tier of guys that are like, I can't tell if you're being challenged enough, but you guys show stuff that I like, and I kind of am interested as to what you're doing. I honestly wrote down on here, this is like the perfect guy for Kansas City. Like, as I got past Josh Jones and Mekhi Becton, I started like thinking, like, where this guy could go, right? Where were some of the spots that I'd be interested in watching some of these players go to, right? Because when we get to the next tier of guys, I have like ideas for some of these dudes, where they should go, what's their best fit. And I just thought this is the perfect guy for Kansas City, right? Like, this is a good out in space, good pulling across, very athletic, gets his guy on the ground, good at pancaking guys. And it's actually been rumored that he's met with Kansas City and quite a few teams. I mean, he's got like about a dozen teams that have already talked to him on Skype or FaceTime or Zoom, if you've been using the Zoom, everybody. Yeah, he's got a lot of these where guys try to beat him outside, and he rides them out. Very good at pushing guys past the arc of the pocket. Very good at pivoting his guy out in the run game. Sometimes like the QB breaks contain, so you can't there's a lot of these 3-man rushes that like it's hard to figure out. But he always stays in phase with his defender. He stayed in phase with his defender really well. Oklahoma's a good game to watch for Josh Jones if you're trying to get a good idea. Decent, like this is the thing I saw with him. He's decent as a run blocker, decent in pass pro. I saw a lot more pass pro reps that I thought were like applicable to the NFL compared to like Mekhi Becton, which is why I have him a little bit higher than Mekhi Becton. I think an outside zone team would probably love him. And then, like, again, like, didn't really get challenged a lot, though. Oklahoma was really, like, the best tape I got to see this year against a really good team. Like Cincinnati, I got to watch a little bit of that game. I know he's a former basketball player. I know some NFL linemen, Ross Tucker, has said, like, he likes it when a guy's a former basketball player for a tackle. Like, they seem to know how to kind of to get in front and block and play defense really well. Defense in basketball terms, not defense like playing defense as a tackle, but like the what you're trying to do as a tackle translate to maybe being like as a basketball player. Whereas he was comparing this to Tristan Wirfs, who was a former wrestler, saying like maybe he fits more of a guard thing. Now I kind of disagree. Like from what I saw with Tristan Wirfs, I think he could definitely play tackle. And I was going into it kind of with the mindset of like, oh, Tristan Wirfs is definitely, maybe he's an all-pro guard. He would definitely be an all-pro guard. But both him and Jones fit these outside zone schemes, very good in space. I think those are the kind of guys you want on these, like, the Kyle Shanahan offenses or, a Gary Kubiak offense. It's just like you're going to want to get them moving and blocking out in space. So, again, USF. All right, let's go on. So that's like the first tier, those 5 guys. We start out with Jedrick Wills. We go to Andrew Thomas. Then we go ahead and meet up with our boy Tristan Wirfs, Josh Jones, Mekhi Becton. Now you guys must be wondering, like, what's that next tier? And there's a bunch of guys in this next tier. I'm telling you right now, it's not. This is kind of like my second rounder kind of spot. Like, I don't think any of these guys would want to take in the first round, right? They might go in the first round. Sorry, these are the ones I actually have kind of typed up. So it's like a kind of a bulk of guys. I don't like saying it as a pure rank because I'm not a team, right? I'm not picking guys for you. Like, if I had one team, I might pick this guy. So, for instance, I have this next grouping of guys is Isaiah Wilson, Ezra Cleveland, Lucas Niang, in no particular order, by the way. Prince Tego, and that's and Austin Jackson, and Trey Adams, and Brandon Bark. Like, it's kind of weird cluster of dudes. Oh, here we go. See, I really liked Isaiah Wilson's tape, right? Isaiah Wilson, Ezra Cleveland, Lucas Niang, Prince Tego, they all seem to have things that these guys can probably start soonish or have a quality that can make them a high-level starter. So, for instance, Isaiah Wilson, right? The other Georgia tackle. Yeah, we were talking about Andrew Thomas before. We're talking about his teammate who was on the other side, who was actually pretty fun to watch, right? Andrew Thomas seemed a little higher, and then, like, you'd look on the other side, and it's like, who's that guy on the other side? Pull this back up. So, again, this is another guy who goes up to high-level competition. We know where he wins. He wins. He has a solid anchor, very good gap power kind of guy. Gets guys off the ball, gets guys off the line of scrimmage really well. I could see him going to Detroit, Miami, New England. Just like his movement skills are not. He's going to get beat around the edge every once in a while, right? But you're not going through him. You're going to bull rush him, right? You're not going to bully him, right? So he's got a good enough level of awareness where if you know what his weakness is, right? Like, for instance, when Jack Conklin came into the NFL, we kind of knew what his weaknesses could have been, or the Titans, his first year, kind of knew what his potential weaknesses were and gave him a lot of help. That was his first year, and that's why he had like a really good first year. Then he tore his ACL the next year. Then there was some scheme changes and coming off of injury. That's why Jack Conklin's had a tumultuous 4 years in Tennessee, and then he goes ahead and goes to the Cleveland Browns. So Isaiah Wilson's one of those guys, right? He might lose a couple of reps to the outside push, but he's this is the Trent Brown, guys. Like, this is the guy who I would say is like, this is Trent Brown when Trent Brown was Trent Brown. Like, Mekhi Becton can be like elite level Trent Brown. This is like the initial form of Trent Brown, and it's like Isaiah Wilson can hold up against speed to power and bull rush really well. So what doesn't he do well? He's gonna get beat around the edge every once in a while. He's kind of he has that little bit of, okay, I can't keep up with you all the way, but you can kind of manage that a bit, right? Like, you can get a guy to maybe throw in a chip block, and as long as you don't let him beat you to the inside, you might be good. Schemes affect that too. If you're doing a quick passing scheme or a vertical set, depends on what you're trying to do. If you're doing a more vertical scheme, I could see him being a potential second-round pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As I said before, the Miami Dolphins, maybe they're looking for the right tackle if they drafted the left tackle in the first round. Or Detroit Lions got rid of Ricky Wagner, right? They signed Haloti Vaitai, but, they might be going like, you know what, we don't want to totally be tied to Vaitai. What if Vaitai is just better as a guard? So this is another guy who's like, okay, you could put him up on the other side of the line, and I think he'd be a solid right tackle. I know where he's going to win. I think he's going to be solid. I don't think he's going to be amazing. So, okay, we talked about Isaiah Wilson, right? One of this tier of guys, the Georgia product, and I like him because, again, high-level competition, and we know where he wins. And he's kind of the safe guy in this grouping, right? Then there's Ezra Cleveland, all right? Everybody's been talking about him quite a bit because he blew up the combine. I watched a bit of his tape. Hard thing is, his competition kind of weird, came out of nowhere. He's decent pass blocker, but, like, it's weird because sometimes, you'll watch some of his tape and you'll be like, oh, well, he's athletic, so he's got to be really good at getting guys around the edge. And honestly, like, I thought he had a better anchor than I thought, although sometimes he gets pushed up and loses a rep that way. And, in fact, that happened in the Wyoming game. It depends on what games you're watching. I remember watching him against Florida State. I actually thought that was a little bit better of a game than some other people thought it was. But he's very athletic, very good in space. But he's not like the difference when I say good in space, though. he's not like this plus level run blocker in space, right? Like like Tristan Wirfs, and Josh Jones. You get them into space, they might knock somebody out. Same thing with Mekhi Becton. You get these guys like on a roll and hitting somebody, yeah, they might like clear out a guy or two. You're not getting that with Ezra Cleveland. Like, you might want to try and pull him across the formation, but he's not doing enough as a run blocker where it's useful. So, he leaves a lot to be desired in the run blocking department. He can, seal guys off. He has a good ceiling, right? Like, he has that potential to be Eric Fisher, Lane Johnson kind of guy, like very athletic, Colton Miller. And I think that's kind of what he reminds me of, is those kind of guys. More of a traits kind of guy that can develop. But honestly, I don't want to take that guy in the first round. I would take him maybe like second or third round. And this is kind of the second round grouping of guys. This is your like, okay, we did well in the first round. This is our kind of swing for the fences guy. Brian O'Neill's another guy. Minnesota Vikings, like, came out very athletic, but wasn't fully refined yet. This is kind of the same thing. Get him in the NFL, get him some time in the weight room. Get him to have an anchor a little bit. Get him some technique. Get him with some good coaching and get a little bit of technique drilled in there. And maybe in a year you have a really good tackle. And I think that's a potential thing. You could be like Brian O'Neill. So that's Ezra Cleveland. I didn't hate him. He's got a high ceiling. And again, like, good pass pro, has some issues though. Like, again, has quality of competition questions. You're not really seeing him against guys who you're going to be seeing in the NFL a whole lot. So next guy up was Lucas Niang. Lucas Niang, it's weird because it's like, initially I'm watching some tape, and he dealt with a labrum issue in his hip for a good part of the year. You're watching it and you're going like, all right, I heard a lot of good things about this guy, but it's like, apparently I was watching the game right before he stopped playing. So I'm like when he finally had to just go out for surgery. So you're watching it and you're going like, all right, this guy's good in space. I see some potential good here, but like like, my guess is you watch some of the tape and then you go, all right, I don't see why people are so big on this guy. And then you watch some earlier tape, and you go, oh, now I kind of get it, right? Decent in pass pro, very scheme diverse. Like, if this guy was healthy, he would be a first-round pick, potentially. He would probably be towards the end of the first round. He would probably be in that Mekhi Becton, Josh Jones tier if he wasn't injured and you had more tape to watch on him. Because when you watch some earlier tape of him, he's very scheme diverse, can bulldoze a guy over, can get out in space and run block very well. This is a guy who's like, ooh, I kind of like this guy at right tackle, right? He's kind of like, if I was the Titans, I know a lot of people pair him with the Titans. I don't think he's going in the first round. He might fall out of this third. It's an injury issue. Him and a couple of other guys have some injury question marks. He's one of those guys, and he might fall out because you didn't get to see a lot of the competition that what he can be. You saw a little bit of it, but you're not sure, if he's going to be totally fine after that injury. Is he going to lose a step? Are you going to have to redshirt him? Is he going to be ready for next year? But I liked what I saw when I looked at earlier stuff. But it's a weird spot to put him in. Like, I don't want to put him. He's definitely not a first-rounder in my book right now, because even, like, say you were just giving me this tape, because the injury kind of blocks out the tape that you get to see, like the most recent tape that you get to watch. So you're kind of going like, well, what's him at his healthiest and at his best? You didn't really get to see that. I think him at his best is a really good right tackle, like good tier right tackle, like Bakhtiar, like Bulaga level tackle. Might be better than that potentially. Like, again, he's very scheme diverse run wise. And again, he was a decent pass blocker as well. So, the next guy down, I had Prince Tago. This is kind of like and he kind of caps out this tier. He's kind of if you were looking for a left tackle that's not a great run blocker, but solid, has handled good competition, right? Prince Tago, Auburn, plays in the SEC, but Auburn's offense, again, it's one of those things like kind of like Louisville's where, you're looking at it and you're going, oh no, they don't play in the SEC, but you're watching them play some of these teams and you're going like, okay, like all right. Sorry, everybody. You're watching him play and you're seeing him go up against LSU, right? And he holds up well against. He's getting the rougher rushers, right? Like him, I watched him and Jeff Driscoll at the same time, and I hear a lot of good things about Jeff Driscoll from like one group of people, and I hear Prince Tago from the other group of people, and I go, well, why is there such a differentiation here? And I kind of realized like Tago was getting a lot of the harder rushers here. So you're watching Prince Tago, and you're like, okay, like I could buy this. I could buy into this dude. He's not gonna wow you, right? This is the guy who it's like Deion Dawkins on the Bills. Like he's kind of that level starter. Like okay, like he doesn't have the ceiling of Ezra Cleveland. He doesn't have the run blocking chops of Lucas Niang and Isaiah Wilson, but he's kind of like. But I saw him go up against a lot of good edge rushers. Again, it's a team, Auburn's scheme makes it hard to fully assess because we don't got a lot of true pass sets. But like I said, he went up against a lot of good rushers. I think the team that fits here is the LA Rams, right? They need a replacement for Andrew Whitworth in a year or two. He's probably going to be there at the end of the second round, early third. They now have a second round pick. This is a perfect guy for the Rams to target in the second round. He's not going to wow you. You get him into, again, a coaching system. You don't have to start him right away, but you're getting a guy in the room that you're going like, okay, we're building for the future here, right? We're trying to get to the next tier here, and we're trying to get a good tackle on a cheap contract. I think getting him as a second-round pick for like a team like the LA Rams is perfect. I think it's a good start. So I liked Lucas Niang. This next two guys are interesting, right? Next 3 or 4 guys, really. So the next guys on my list are Austin Jackson, Trey Adams, Ben Bark, Matt Pert. Okay, so let's start with these three. Trey Adams, Austin Jackson, Ben Bark. These guys are kind of like the third-rounder guys, like towards the end of the, like mid-third round, end of the third round. And the reason why is Trey Adams was injured a lot, right? But, like, we got to see him come back. So, like, I watched him play the Rose Bowl, and he did not look, like, so if you don't know, 2018 he missed 10 games in 2018. So, barely played in 2018. Played a couple of games, was played in the Rose Bowl, and you saw him go up against Chase Young. And for a guy who was injured against Chase Young, I kind of have to give him a little bit of coming off an injury, he was very rusty, going up against Chase Young, like, you're watching that, you're going like, all right, let's see what he does next year. And I saw a couple more games into this year in 2019, and I'm a little shocked that everybody's like, oh, he's done, he's out. He's probably, I would say he's Prince Tago at this point, right? Like, I don't think you're going to get, like, people thought this guy was going to be a first-round pick. I don't think you're getting that. What I think you're getting as far as Trey Adams go is I think you're getting like a solid starter who you're hoping doesn't get injured. Again, like I was saying, like in that Deion Dawkins tier, guys who are going to be like, okay, I could live with this. We're not losing at tackle at least. The Eric Fisher like level of guy. It's not as athletic as Eric Fisher, but in that tier of guy where you're like, all right, we're not losing at tackle this week. Like he's going to get beat every once in a while, but I kind of like, I went through a lot of. This is actually one of the few guys I probably have. Yeah, I had quite a few notes on him. This is where I started typing out my notes because I started being an intelligent guy. Not really, but I started speak to text into the phone. So, good at covering his defender, good outside run block. Doesn't always seek contact. That's kind of the major issue I see with him. Even when he seemed a little bit healthier. He also needs to avoid going on the ground. Like, there's a few of these guys who go to the ground too much. That's how you get injured, everybody. You go to the ground. That's what we learned in grade school. You don't hang out on the ground. He's definitely a better pass blocker than a run blocker. That's why I put him in that, like, he's like Lucas Niang with more red flags. It's kind of where I look at him. He can kind of get manhandled a little bit. But like he's gotten a lot of pure pass sets that even as he got better. Now the problem is, right? We saw him in that Ohio State game in the Rose Bowl, and he got beat up a bit by Chase Young, but I think he held okay. But then you look to like the okay, like he did okay here. He you're expecting him to take a step forward, and the problem is other than Oregon, like Oregon, he played pretty well against. Actually, I was pretty happy with what I saw from him for Oregon. Um, like I said, doesn't always seek contact, but he was a good pass blocker. He played pretty well in the Oregon game, and I watched the Cal game as well, and I watched a couple others, games and a couple other clips, and he's a solid tackle. Again, if he's healthy, I don't. Again, he's in that tier of guy. The problem is there's not an upside to the guy. Which the other guy who he's sharing this spot with is Austin Jackson, who a lot of people look at as maybe a high upside guy. He's being talked about as a first-round pick. A lot of these guys get talked about as for potential first-round picks. Austin Jackson gets thrown around as this. I did not like what I saw from Austin Jackson, mainly because some of the tape you get to watch of Austin Jackson is against guys who are in this draft. Bradley Anae and AJ Epinesa. Like, wow, you couldn't get better tape to watch of a guy who's not like in again, like he's playing some very good competition. So now you're watching these defenders, and you're like, okay, what is he doing? Well, first off, I thought he handled AJ Epinesa a lot better than he handled Bradley Anae, which will tell you how he loses, right? He loses against speed rusher to the outside and a guy who's a really good counter. And that Bradley Anae ate his lunch all day. Like, honestly, if you believe in Bradley Anae and you think he's really good, then you might just think Austin Jackson's kind of going to have a hard time with, he's also the thing why he's got the higher ceiling, though, is that he just kind of started out the position. He's just learning it. And you could kind of see that. I like USC's coaching staff as far as tackles go. They're not pro ready, but they're kind of in at least that, like, it's like taking like a high school course. It's like a college prep kind of deal. He was in the college prep version of an offensive line. So I kind of liked a lot of his pass sets sometimes, but he kind of like got brutalized by these two guys, and it was like, okay, like I can see why people look at him and go, oh dear God, how can you want this guy? At the same time, these guys are, you're seeing him go up against some real NFL prospects. And, especially he handled his own a little bit against AJ Epinesa. Like the first half of the game against AJ Epinesa, he held pretty well. It wasn't until like towards the second half and the end of the first half that he started having some problems with him. And AJ Epinesa started getting, his goat. So wasn't as huge of a fan of Austin Jackson. I think that's wise. You're getting an easy translation of a player from, who he's going to be going up against in the NFL. All right, so we talked about them. Oh, I also watched Ben Barked, St. John's tackle, who is at the Senior Bowl. There's one tape that's of the Tommies and the Johnnies. It's kind of fun. He's a fun bit to watch. His tape's unlike everybody else because it looks like a high school tape, so it's kind of like fun to watch a little bit too. Problem with a guy like this, and I think third round is probably the best you could probably look at taking this guy. And I wish I would, I'm not the kind of guy who want to take him any higher than the third round because then you're really risking missing on a prospect because he played against a lower level of competition. And when I'm saying lower level, some of the guys looked like they were high schoolers when they were playing him. Like, oh, wow, he's bullying 8th graders. Like, you should call him adult or something. And it really was kind of like that. You're watching him bully these guys around, and sometimes he did lose a rep or two, but he dominated mostly. Like 90% of the time he was doing really well in the lower area competition. He also showed out well at the Senior Bowl, which is what you like to see. Again, I can't see him going above the third round, though, just because you're looking at the level of competition and the available tape. I like what I saw. But, like, again, like, you don't want to be the guy who drafts, like a small school guy and then you missed out on somebody who could have been better. That's why the third round's really good for those kind of prospects. After Barsh, right, it goes Matt Pert, Sadiq, Charles, and Jeff Driscoll. Matt Pert, probably him. These are so once you get past Barsh, it's this tier of guys who's probably like fourth, fifth rounders, right? Maybe guys who can start in the NFL or be good, solid backups. Like I think Driscoll's a solid backup in the NFL with low end starter capability. Like I watched his tape. I get why some people like him. Can be a solid pass blocker. Again, another guy who I didn't think was all that great run blocker. But again, Auburn's system makes it really hard to interpret some of it. But again, they had pro pass sets. They had pro opportunities. I'm not saying it was total garbage tape. But, you're watching him, and then you're seeing the guy across the line from him, and you're looking at Tago, and you're like, whoa, Tago's doing a lot better. Like, I don't know. That's just me personally. So, Jeff Driscoll's kind of, like, I think a fringe-level starter. I think he's like a fourth rounder. I think Driscoll and Sadiq and Pert are about fourth, fifth round guys. And Sadiq's tape was kind of an interesting one to watch because he's the guy you get to watch a lot of good competition, and then you look at him and you go, but you didn't really do well. So, but he handled okay. Like, so for instance, he's definitely willing to seek contact out. He held up a lot in 5-man protections. So the main question I always ask is, does this guy win? How does he win? How does he lose? Why is he winning? Why is he losing? Right? And, he shows some awareness, question marks. This is a guy who I looked at when I was doing handwritten stuff. I shouldn't have handwritten any notes. He was responsible for a lot of problems on that LSU offense. Like, actually, it's a funny thing. So I'll hear stuff about Joe Burrow, and he has a bunch of these, draftable prospects and how great the LSU offensive line was. LSU offensive line was not that good, everybody. Honestly, Joe Burrow made Sadiq Charles look better. I'm going to say that right now. Sadiq Charles, there are some good things about Sadiq, right? You got to see him go up against high-level competition. You got to see where he wins. You got to see where he kind of loses. Didn't. All right, what's this one? Seeing where I have the other notes on this guy. Faster guys give him a problem. He's got a decent anchor, right? So this is kind of like the left tackle version of Isaiah Wilson, except he doesn't have he's not as good of a run blocker as Isaiah Wilson. Faster speed guys give him a problem. He's got a solid anchor. So, this is Isaiah Wilson's notes. Never mind. So I was wrong. Ignore that last part. Technique-wise, he's not bad, but he needs. I think what he needs is a little bit more strength. That's why I gotta look at my notes a little bit better. I look at him as like a fourth round, fifth round kind of guy. I want to see him in a more aggressive blocking scheme, a lot more aggressive pass blocking. His technique's not bad, but he needs a bit more like strength to his game. He loses out on a lot of reps, and again, he's going in the LSU offense. He was going one-on-one a lot of the time. Like there's no help in these pass blocking sets. You're getting to see what he would really do in the NFL. There's a lot of times where I feel like he should have engaged quicker. And every once in a while he gets some good recovery. I think he has some awareness question marks. He doesn't have a bad bend to him. Very good, run block. Sometimes it could be a decent run blocker. Like I say, he's probably like the lesser version of Isaiah Wilson. But he had a lot of pass sets where he's driven back into Burrow, where he's just beating around the corner. He honestly is like we had the best view of what we could see. Now I think The upside is, when I was looking at his tape and kind of getting done with him, I feel like the best team, he would probably be a high-end backup for like a team like Carolina. Same thing, right? But like I'm saying, he's probably a guy who, if you get him into like a strength and conditioning program, you might develop something out of him. But I don't see him coming out into the NFL right away and being a starter. I think he's a like fringe backup kind of guy. I think he's not the guy you want, right? Like you're not always confident about how he's gonna win. Like I was saying before, you know how Isaiah Wilson's gonna win. You know how he's gonna lose. You don't see that with Sadiq. You see Sadiq, you kind of go like, oh. Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel kind of worried taking you now. So I feel like he's more of a 4th or 5th round guy. And I think that kind of actually wraps up this tackle task. Like I said, it starts out with Jedrick Wills, goes to Andrew Thompson, Tristan Wirfs, follows up with Josh Jones and Mekhi Becton. Then we get to this kind of tier of different kind of guys like Isaiah Wilson, Ezra Cleveland, Lucas Niang, Prince Tego. Then we get to the Trey Adams, Austin Jackson tier, Ben Bart, and then the next tier down, like Matt Perk, Sadiq Charles, Jeff Driscoll, who are kind of like day 3 guys who have some developmental ability or high-end backup, maybe like low-end starter ability. So I kind of had fun with this. I recommend looking at some tape, maybe not of tackles, because I know some people find offensive line play a little... But I found it fun, man. I found it fun, especially when you're watching like tape from Alabama or LSU, especially when Tua and Jerry Jeudy or even Calvin Ridley or the other Ridley. Like I said, it is fun to watch tape sometimes. If you're watching some fun offenses, it's fun to watch tape. It's not always fun to watch tape when you're watching like some grueling tape and you're like, what the bloody... And there's some guys here who I was not always happy to watch, but some of them, man. They were fun. Follow the podcast at DraftVice on Twitter, at DraftVice_football on Instagram. You can follow me at Brojo Death Punch. It's BROJO. Death is in the end of life. Punch, like that delicious drink they sell at the store, which you can't go to anymore without a mask in New Jersey. That, my friends, is a fact. And like I said, like the podcast, subscribe, share it, talk about it. And maybe, tell people about it. Hang out and chat and leave a comment, leave a review. Like it on Facebook. We have a Facebook. It is probably in the show notes. Yes, it is in the show notes usually. And I hope you have a good week. I hope you're all doing well. I'm going to try and do some more prospect reviews, some more positional reviews going into the draft as we get some, time freed up. Try to clear up the rest of the 2020 looking forward schedule. And then we'll be at the draft soon. Everybody's coming. And this was a fun one. I liked doing this all the time I spent looking at them beautiful hog mollets.
We're on the same
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
about the past and about the future.